you so much for all of your films. I think that, especially at a time right now where the political environment, the economy, everything that we're reading about on the news on a daily basis, we need community now more than ever. And I feel like each one of your films is sort of like people have found new communities, or they found ways to, connect with their communities. So I would love for you each just to talk a little bit, say your name, your film, and sort of like what the inspiration was, or what the catalyst was to make that film, to bring that film to us, to the audience. What are you hoping that we're going to see with that? So Sabrina, I'm going to start with you.
It's okay. I'm used to this. I'm Sabrina Aviles. I was the co-director of the Acolytes of the South Bronx. I'm a local filmmaker, Latina. I'm half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. I'm also the executive director of Cinefest Latino Boston. But that's not why I'm here. So Lisa's my partner in crime. The film Acolytes was actually a commissioned film by Boston College, and over a period of 6 years, they commissioned my co-director and I to produce a series of 3 different films about Latinos and the relationship with the Catholic Church. So we really, I think most Latinos most of us grow up as Catholics, and we grow up in the church, and we have this cultural connection to the church. It's sort of who we are and what defines us. But we have a very, I think if you talk to most Catholics, many have walked away from the church and embraced Protestant, Pentecostal, Episcopalian, other types of religion. Because in many ways, I think the Catholic Church has, especially in the United States, it's been a very rocky road. And I think also the goal of the film was to show that we have to embrace, the church has to embrace Latinos and who we are. So this film was the 3rd of the trilogy. The first one was about a homosexual male who had issues with the church for obvious reasons, but reconciled and went back to the church. The second one was local, shot in Chelsea, and it was about this woman's own journey with the church, and who decided eventually to leave the church. And then this third one, we wanted to actually address a couple things, because I knew, being Latina myself, that there's a reason why a lot of us make decisions based on the influence that the church has on our lives. And so, when a lot of people say, how did, all these Latinos vote for the current administration? He will not be named. And part of it is because we just have these really kind of conservative views. We're very traditional and very conservative. I'm not saying that the characters that we featured were conservative, but they were. It sort of shows that they're deeply tied to their church, and I love the story for. It's a story that really doesn't have like antagonistic forces as a traditional short may have. It's kind of their own reflections and their own navigating the world, which is in the context of the South Bronx. Which, if anybody knows about the South Bronx, it's a pretty tough neighborhood, and yet they're driven by their church, by love, by sense of purpose and family, which I think are also are really grounded values among Latinos in many cultures. I don't want to exclude other cultures. So for me, it was very personal in that I recognized that. I'm not particularly Euro-Catholic, I'm not particularly a practicing Catholic, but I recognized that sense of value and family, and and again, they easily could have decided on a different way to navigate their own lives, but they chose to embrace the church, albeit charismatic, which within the church itself is a little bit controversial. Sorry, that's a long-winded answer, but that's it. Thanks for being with that.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Herzog. I was the producer of Hear Me. So that film was funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health's Gun Violence Prevention Program via an agency out in Pittsfield, Berkshire County. And the goal of the project was to kind of mobilize the broader public in dialogue around the root causes of gun violence. This film is specifically about homicide, so not the leading cause of death by gun, which is suicide, but specifically young people impacted by homicide. And in our film, we really wanted to treat the young people who have lived through this as the experts. And also in this demographic of homicide, of young people who are often funneled into the criminal justice system and sort of treated as quote unquote criminals, really to try to humanize these young people and learn from them, and hopefully in doing so, create a sense of urgency around addressing the root causes of gun violence in our community. And I will just add one thing, because the theme of today is stories that go untold, and I think this is important. So the agency that had commissioned the film ultimately sent us a cease and desist and did not want the public to see the film. And we don't really know why. I could speculate as to why, but I just think that there's a lot of forces at play that these narratives don't really complement. Mm-hmm. And so that's a larger conversation, but I think it's important context.
Hi, I'm Dave Simons, director of Hear Me. And if you notice some intimacy with our cast, it's all due to Jenny, who worked really hard with those kids for over several years, and was trying to work on a live performance, storytelling, sort of Moth Radio Hour storytelling music event, and then COVID came along, so there could be nothing live, and we switched over to make a documentary, which is what I do. And I really like to try to help people who don't always have a voice. And in Williamstown, Massachusetts, it's sort of an elite, there's a very old college there, and there's a lot of really progressive white people there, and there's a lot of Black Lives Matter signs in the front yard, but right in their backyard is this crisis going on, and no one seems to pay attention to it right there. And it's much more easier, I guess, to support people far away than the people right. So that was kind of a driver for me, and I just want to shout out to Roxbury International Film Festival for putting on such an amazing event for 27 years. If you think about it, that's nothing to sneeze at, and it's really an honor to be included. So thank you.
My name is Rachel Roxbury. I'm a program officer with Mass Humanities. We run a program called Expand Massachusetts Stories, which is about, as you've been saying, expanding people's views of the stories in Massachusetts and funding work that gets those stories across. So I'm really happy to have worked closely with these guys on my left here, who have, through their filmmaking and working together with scholars, have really brought to life these projects and stories from Western Massachusetts in particular, and I'll let them talk more about that.
So I'm Erica Slocum, Black Studies student, PhD scholar at UMass Amherst in the Black Studies department. I've done a lot of work with Mass Humanities around storytelling, but also around digging up history and working with community to tell, specifically our stories, Black stories. And so when they approached me, the question really was, we want to do this work with those folks who have been granted the Expanded Massachusetts Stories grants, but we didn't know which ones to kind of work on, right? And so for me, again, as a black scholar, as a black scholar who studies, Black history, I thought we don't really have a conversation about Black history in Western Mass in the way that tells a broader picture, right, and a broader story. And so we picked these three projects. There's two of y'all, but We put these 3 projects and another project about, you know, lesbians of color in Northampton, which is a predominantly white space in Western Mass. And I think for me, it was just nice to, one, you know, learn the history as we were going along. I had worked with Evan on another film project, you know, the history of Black folks in Holyoke, and just thought, like, this is the way, you know, thinking about when doing this work and thinking about Afro-Cobra, thinking about, you know, Nelson Stevens and his work, and, you know, my advisor, John Bracey, and just being able to be in the space with them when they talked about, you know, the work that they had done over a number of years around Black art. It was very, like, I had the opportunity to be in that space with them, and I thought other people should have the opportunity to be in the space, although they couldn't physically be in the space with them because they had both passed. And for, you know, Mount Calvary and being from Springfield and seeing the church, again, like, this is a 102-year-old church, 105-year-old church, that's like my family church. But, you know, again, we talk about a particular perspective and aspect of Black history, particularly and specifically in Springfield. In Massachusetts, a lot of it happens in Boston and not, you know, out where we are. And so I thought, like, this is a project, this is a story that should be told, and the folks at the church have the opportunity to tell their story the way that they wanted to. And so when, just as a random, this is the last thing I'm gonna say, the family, so the boy being baptized in Hast Thou Stood is my little cousin Jalen. And so, like, and like all the kids that you see are, like, you know, like my little cousins. And so, like, to be in that space and to see, you know, like, our story, the history of one of our family churches to be told, for me, again, as a, you know, as a Black historian, was extremely powerful. And I think lends perspective to, you know, Springfield and Western Mass in general.
First, thank you again for having us here. It's really an honor. My name is Evan Goodchild. Afro-Cobra and Nelson Stevens, Art for the People. I directed that one, and I guess thinking about this question. Thinking about the question of community, few things. I think, first of all, sometimes you get really lucky as a filmmaker, and you just get I was invited into this project by Mass Humanities, we've talked about, and doing the public media. But to be lucky with a wonderful project, and, you know, seeing that art, all those colors on the big screen, it's just knockout, and the stories behind it, and activism in art, and all the rich history there. It's just a knockout story. Then, if you get lucky enough to also work with good people, that's just a bonus. So that project was probably only 3 months, but I just kept shooting because there was so much happening. And so, without further ado, I'd like to, you know, say that Napoleon Jones Henderson is in the flesh right here, Roxbury's home. As Erica mentioned, you know, this is a good person who, you know, I worked with before, and she, you know, kind of ushered me into this project. And I think meeting Napoleon in his studio, his house, his working space, and having that be sort of like the first move into this project. And Kiera Hill was with him, digging into the archives, and I saw their rapport and relationship, and I was like, this is going to be an enjoyable process. And so hopefully we shared some of that on there, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Hello, my name is Joe Aidonidis. I'm a filmmaker from Northampton, Massachusetts, right next to Williamstown, Massachusetts. Hello, my kingdom origin. Thank you all for watching our films, first and foremost. I really appreciate it. I directed 2, Hast Thou Stood, and Rutenbeck Legacy, the last one we saw with Jocelyn Jones. I'm interested in hypocrisy and how crazy the world is, and how the biggest characteristic that an entity can hold is also its biggest weakness. I'm interested in how history is becoming flexible and permeated with lies. I'm also interested in how people become empowered, and those moments lead to them becoming depersonalized and then become part of a community. It's like a weird thing where you really can't be part of a community unless you surrender part of yourself. And I'm really interested in the first part, where you find strength in yourself rather than being like washed over by community. And if you kind of look at Hast Thou Stood and Redefining Legacy as sister films, you notice that there's kind of this, in a lot of religious institutions, this dissolving of community. And for many reasons, you can blame soccer on the weekends like our pastor did, but really what it is like this kind of tightening of the American spirit to be like choked out by, you can name like just, fascism is one, corporatism is another, consumerism, all the bad shit. And I really, we all grew up in that, we all kind of love that, we kind of like cling on to it because like that's our baby and like we're individuals, but those things stood for a long time, and now that they are kind of like slipping through our grasp, we're becoming just like individuals who don't own anything, I'm terrified, and I just think it's important to look at that and just at least feel terror together. And I think that's the first step, and then to like just continue to be in conversation and see like, we can hold each other's hands as we go over the cliff. So just also wanted to say, the three films, Evan and I, we're kind of working in tandem. We're off on NPM as part of one program that we put together, and it was because of the enormous generosity and support of Mass Humanities. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you all, because we're all together, so we're going to stop ourselves from going over that cliff. And I think that that's so much of what all of your movies are about. It really is about finding strength in community, and it's about lifting up the voices. So you're lifting them up by creating films. We talk a lot at RoxFilm about using film as a catalyst for conversation, and being able to bring films like this to the big screen so that people can see themselves in this work. The legacy piece, we're screening again actually with a film about reparations, so we'll be seeing that film again. And then the kids, like just giving them an opportunity to speak, I think is the most important thing, and making them feel like that they're in community. So I want to open it up for questions. If any of you have questions for any of these filmmakers, if any of the filmmakers here have questions for each other, if I think it is amazing. There's so little funding for independent film, for films like this. So maybe before I throw it out, if you want to just talk about why the Mass Humanities Film Program and Mass Humanities supporting films like this. I know Sabrina, this Acolytes was not, but there's one that's coming up. Yes, Sabrina has.
I was just going to say, I'm working on 2 films now that Mass Humanities has kindly funded, so one will definitely be done by next year. So, but I can't be. So there is a connection.
Well, it's a real honor to be able to be in a position to fund storytellers of this caliber, and there's so many stories in this state, and I think it's interesting to be in Boston and showing films about Western Massachusetts. Like it's a far away place, but I can feel that way, and these stories really help draw all of those places together and all of us together. Creating this kind of community as well of storytellers and people who take this in and engage in these questions and conversations. So that's deeply important to what we do. I think with the humanities, it's really about the story conveys all the different thoughts and ideas of the people involved in the culture and the questions and issues that we have and things that we clearly have to address that we're not addressing. And we're hoping all that kind of filters into creating a stronger Commonwealth, really.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
I have a question for the filmmakers of here. What problem did the funders have with the film such that they sent you a cease and desist order?
I think it really was, they're an agency that does a lot of work in the
Can I
community.
just stress
Hold on
one
one
thing?
second.
It wasn't the funder. The funder was DPH. They were
Okay.
happy with it. The funds go to 15 sites throughout the state who then distribute it in that community. So the problem came from the site receiving the funds.
And there was the people at the agency who brought me on were extremely enthusiastic. Those two people left, new people came in, and you know how new people come into an organization and go, everything's messed up here, what's going on? And I don't think they got the idea that a documentary film is a great way to communicate out in the community, and that it would have been extremely good for the agency. They didn't think up the film, we did, and so we had to, it was very involved in a very sad period. It's all completely resolved now, and I think they felt it should promote our agency more, like it should be for us to use to raise money and promote and be more sort of, we can use this in a corporate boardroom to raise money, it shouldn't be for the public. That's what they thought, so.
And I'm just going to add a little bit to that, and I'm speculating here, but I am very involved in gun violence prevention advocacy in Pittsfield specifically, and this is not a problem that's unique to an agency or another. This is a cultural resistance to facing what's happening, and my speculation, and I'm not going to pin it on an agency, but on our society in general, is that if, first of all, Berkshire County is very dependent on tourism, right? So putting out a film about gun violence in Berkshire County is not going to help bring in new business. So, the powers that be who determine what stories get told and who hears them are filtering things out based on what benefits them. So that's one. And two, this film hopefully makes people ask, how are we dealing with gun violence prevention? And in my experience doing this work in that community, the answer is we're really not. So that's an uncomfortable conversation to have, and when it comes to jobs and funding and all that stuff, people get defensive. I would also just say that it costs $90,000 per year to incarcerate one person in the Berkshire County Jail, which is more expensive than the tuition of Williams College, and the police budget has inflated by 50% over the past 4 years, and yet the schools are falling apart and there's nothing to do after school. So all of these things that we know to be true, it's not a convenient thing to talk about, I would say.
It does ask, it causes audience to say, we need to do more, why aren't we doing more? And this agency really is one of the agencies who should be doing more. So.
And also, another layer of the kind of censorship that I do think it's important to talk about is that Joanne, one of his friends that he had lost, was actually killed in a police shooting, and we were told not to say that in the film as well.
I mean, all of your films are like that, right? I mean, that's why you do what you do, right? That's why you do your lifting up, whether it's about finding, researching your legacy and understanding. And no one in Shelburne, I mean, I used to be in tourism, I know the state really well. I spent a lot of time in the Berkshires, I went to camp out there. But yeah, you're right, you're living in these bucolic communities, and no one wants to hear the stories. And no one wants to necessarily, because then all of a sudden you're saying, well, then something's wrong with me. Then you're telling people they're not going to give money to our agency if we have this gun problem. Or, we think, like you said, Black Lives Matter, things all over people's lawn, but how are you really, engaging in the conversation around community?
Or how will we have a job if you solve the problem?
Right, if you solve the problem.
That's a lot.
So, I mean, I don't think, and I don't know if any of you, either of you or Sabrina have been stopped or have said, don't do this, we don't want to bring this up, because we've been talking a lot, and I know it's only day 3 of RoxFilm, we've been talking a lot about, the balance between corporate or government and public safety and the safety of our citizens and the knowledge of our citizens. And especially now in this political climate, we see that even more and more, right? People are really afraid to talk about what's really happening because you're going to lose your funding. So you need a mass humanities who's gonna, who is under the gun as well on a daily basis, to help support this work. And I mean, that's why I think it's really important.
Being out in the neck of the woods, I've done a lot of stories about heroin, and because there's a ton of heroin in Western Massachusetts, as we know. And as beautiful as it is, people, rich and poor, escape into it. And there's been a lot of screenings and a lot of things about it to like get films out there. And a lot of times, you meet with people who are like the head of all these organizations. You show it to them, and it's like, can you make it happier? Like this little thing of like, can't you just like put a little cream at the end and like make it like tasty? And I'm like, no. It's like, oh, it always ends, it's unresolved. I'm like, of course it's unresolved. It's your job. Like, they can figure it out. I did my side, you do yours. And there is this resistance to maybe people not on an individual level, but there is that kind of like systematic pull that I think even the people who lead these things are unaware that they perpetuate this thing that they're trying to heal and prevent. And, I've lost a lot of faith in them because of those experiences.
I mean, Sabrina, you've also done films like in Chelsea, and we're dealing with major issues around migration.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm working on a film that was partially funded by Mass Humanities. I've been filming in Chelsea for 5 years, and we thought we were sort of the premise of the film is the challenges of the city. We started filming during the pandemic before vaccines, and it's gone through a lot over the last 5 years, and we thought we were done last fall, and then January 20th happened, and so we're now in the thick of it, documenting ICE raids, talking to people, witnessing it, and it's really, and all of a sudden everything has shifted, because and we've been there for 5 years, and people have been really wonderful about letting them in. Now we come in and they look at a camera and they're like, and we have to say, no, it's us. But even with that trust that we've gained over 5 years, they don't want the camera. Don't point it at me, So it's a whole new set of rules. So it's really, and there's politicians also. We have one of our characters is a politician, and now she's like, don't film me, or she won't comment. She doesn't want to take sides. She won't comment on what's going on. She's like, I'm doing the work behind the scenes. So it's really, but we're there because I do want to say something, and I say this also because I think in the midst of what's going on, it's really impacting the independent film voice. Everything, and you may not all be aware of it. We're deeply aware of it, and with public media is on the point of getting defunded. Public media, and I think right now, and I say this as a curator, this is the curator hat now talking, is that now more than ever, I think organizations like Mass Humanities it's wonderful that they're on the right side of history. I think more than ever, these conversations with film festivals, I know for me, I'm taking it now like we have to step it up. Because if we're losing funding, if we're losing distribution channels, one of the last few things is this whole area of film festivals. So we need you to come and support us and engage in these conversations, because even though they're trying to change the narrative, we are here documenting the truth, and we're not going to go away. So that's our charge. Fine, we may not be able to put it on PBS, we may not be able to get funding to get on a streamer, but this is the forum where we're going to be talking about what is actually going on in the communities, documenting the truth, not always good, but sometimes celebrating who we are. And I think that this is, I'm so grateful that you made the time on a beautiful Saturday to come, but I think this is going to be the trend, at least for now. So we're going to be continuing, stepping it up, engaging filmmakers, showing things that may or may not be controversial, but I think showing things that speak to the truth and what this country really, really is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sabrina. All right, we need to,
Sorry.
we're going to have to wrap it up. Napoleon, short and sweet?
Very short and very sweet.
Okay.
Let me answer you. I want Well, no, now.
No, very short. No, very short, very sweet. 57 years after Cobra has been doing what we've been doing. And we started in 68, and that's the same energy and the same atmosphere was happening in 68, 65 as happening today. And the thing that I have to say about that, which I see is the common thread through all what you all are doing, do the work. It's all about it. Because if we haven't done the work, and I think we, all those in the film, have not done the work, what we've experienced today does not have been experienced. So it's only about doing the work. So whatever's happening down there in that other place, you know, we don't have to worry about that. Do the work, stay positive, everything else, because the old folks told me when I was a youngster, this too shall pass.
Thank you, filmmakers, Mass Humanities, thank you so much for your work, your support, everything you're doing to help raise and lift these voices, and for you all, as Pauline says, you gotta just do the work, we have to keep doing it, we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna get to it. Good. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, if you came all the way from Western Mass. It's really, we don't think you're that far away. We really don't. I mean, I go often, so, you know, we'll come out more. Most definitely. So thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it.